What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Fantasy Files podcast, where we talk about our favorite fantasy series and topics. We are your co-hosts, Spencer and Gabe, and we are on a roll, bringing you guest after guest these last few weeks, as today we are joined by the magnificent RJ Bayley. What is up, RJ?
Hello, I'm delighted to be here, and I think that's the only time I'll ever be called magnificent. So thanks very much for that. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, I'm about to flatter you even more because RJ Bayley is an extremely talented audiobook narrator and voice actor, having just recently finished his narration of We Men of Ash and Shadow, which we talked about last week with the author Holly Tinsley. Today, we'll be diving into the industry of voice acting and audiobook narrating and getting to know RJ and what his journey in this career has been like. This episode will be completely spoiler-free, so no need to worry about that. Thank you all so much for listening and watching wherever you consume our content. If you're watching on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe. It helps us out a ton. And follow us on Twitter at Files Fantasy, or just look up the Fantasy Files podcast. Next week, unless something goes terribly wrong and the Dark Lord rises from the ashes of Mordor, we will finally be covering the first book in the Lightbringer saga, and we cannot wait to talk about it. But we haven't read it yet, so let's talk about what we have been reading. RJ, we usually do this segment at the beginning where we talk about what we've been reading lately or what we like to read. Have you been reading anything that hasn't been like for work and like just for yourself? Or if not, what do you like to read?
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to brief me, by the way. I watch your show. Don't worry. I know what's going on. I watch you guys. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird, like having you on my screen where I'm often watching you, but now you're interacting with me. There's a weird thing going on.
That's awesome.
I'm currently reading. I don't know any. I only listen to audiobook. I don't know how many pages are left, but I do have 3 hours 52 minutes left of Chaos Reigns by
excellent
J. Smith.
Wow.
Which I'm enjoying a lot.
Nice.
It's kind of like if you guys have had him on, right? I've not watched the
Yeah,
episode yet.
We have,
but,
Yep.
yeah. So I'm enjoying that a lot. I just from the cover alone, I actually assumed it was like some high fantasy kind of thing, but it's not. It reminds me a lot of my touchstone is kind of like Buffy that I grew up watching.
Right.
It's got that kind of snark, that snappiness, that kind of like a bit of sauciness to it as well. It's quite irreverent. I'm really enjoying it. So I've just read as well. I'm actually heresy on this show, I know, but I'm actually more of a sci-fi guy.
Hey, that's
so
what
I've
I've been
just
reading
read.
lately.
I've just read Gate of Bones, or The Gate of Bones by Andy Clark, which is the second in the Dawn of Fire series, because I am a absolute addict for Warhammer 40,000 fiction, Black Library stuff. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that, and that's like a weighty, Warhammer 40,000 invented grimdark, a weighty grimdark, serious epic war thing. So Oath Broken is a really nice, in the best possible way. This isn't like damning with faint praise. It's like a really nice palate cleanser. Because I'm going to go on to the 5th season next. I actually started that, and then I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to just a little something to kind of cleanse the palate. It's not quite so epic. And it's really doing the trick. So yeah, I'm enjoying that book a lot at the moment.
Awesome.
Definitely. Yeah, I find that often I need a palate cleanser. Matter of fact, Gabe and I are actually reading sci-fi right now to get a little bit away from fantasy for a minute, just to kind of refresh, and it helps a lot. It really does.
It does.
Mm-hmm. Totally. It's like with video games, I do it as well. I'll have like a massive RPG, I'll play Skyrim, or I'm playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey or Valhalla, and then in between I just want to play Doom or something.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
something that'll take
Yep.
me maybe a week of hardcore playing, that is basically a linear straight line, just murdering everything inside,
Yes.
and then I'll go back into character building.
Yep, I
Yeah.
like that.
That's why we play Rocket League in between
Exactly.
in between every 35th edition of Skyrim.
I've had it for years, Skyrim, and I've literally only just a few months ago finished the main quest. Like, I've just been playing it for years and years on my one character, just getting to know the landscape, meeting the people. Then I was like, I probably should finish the main quest now.
Well, yeah,
so
there's so much to do in that game, and people kind of give it crap that it's been like the same game for 15 years or however long it's been out, but there's literally so much to do. You almost could never really finish that game. Like, there's so much going on.
I've got the Game of the Year edition as well, so there's enough in Skyrim, never mind Hearthfire or whatever it's called, and the other add-on packs they've got. I'm doing the Vampire Hunter one at the moment. It's just so much to do. It's a masterpiece. It's one of the greatest bits of art in any platform I've ever experienced.
Yeah, for sure.
How about really quick on this topic? Have you ever played Fallout, RJ? Like Fallout 3, New Vegas, all those older ones?
I have not. I'm actually quite daunted by them. I've got like Fallout 4, but I've never touched it yet because I'm a kind of slave to certain franchises. Like, I'm obsessed with Assassin's Creed, playing every
Assassin's Creed.
Now I play it to death, and they're massive. And then I've got, Morrowind or some of, and I've just played Control, which was surprisingly massive as well, which was incredible. So I'm actually like, I'm daunted to get into another series, which is going to take me a huge portion of the year to do.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say that the Skyrim and Fallout, like, where the size scale is like very similar. It's huge, humongous.
It's like when the Red Dead Redemption 2 came out. I love the first one, but when they said that's the biggest game of all time, I was like, I think I'm out then. I think I'm not going to bother with that one.
Right.
It's
too much.
Have you by chance, we talked about this last week with Holly, have you played Dishonored by chance?
No, that's another one I've got because it was on PS Plus. But I've heard a lot of people say it's like Dishonored. I should play it. You know what? I will do now.
For sure. It's surprisingly similar. You'll get into it, and just the aesthetic alone, the way things look, it's like, oh, this is We Men of Ash and Shadow. I was surprised she had never played it. Okay, so you mentioned Warhammer 40K. Have you read any of the like Forgotten Realms or like Dragonlance or anything like that?
No, I want to dip my toe in. The Drizzt stuff looks like fun. But is there a place I should start?
I have no idea. I've been trying to get recommendations for myself. We just picked up the first Drizzt book, Homeland. I think it was on sale on Audible, and I mean that's where I'm gonna start. It seems as good of a place as any. The Dragonlance, I bring that up because you mentioned having a palate cleanser. And I think that is going to be a really good palate cleanser for me. It's kind of a very, I don't want to speak out my ass or anything, but it seems like a very simple fantasy story. Just like you got your elves, you got your dwarves, you got your bright fantasy world where they're fighting dragons. And, I'm like, I think that'll be a good palate cleanser for me if I need it in the future.
It's good when you don't. This is, again, not wanting to. This is not a criticism. It's quite good to have those books where you don't need to work too hard.
Yeah.
To imagine all these incredible, innovative concepts, which are, you know, incredible and innovative. But sometimes one of the reasons why I find so easy to listen to read Warhammer 40,000 fiction is because I know what everything looks like.
Yeah.
I know what all the spaceships look like. I know what Mark 10 power armor looks like. I know like what all the weapons do. I know the weird terminology they're using. So yeah, it's good to just not have to work very hard sometimes and just know instantly what everything is, what it does, and its place in the world.
And then you can just focus on more of the story instead of all the objects that they use.
Totally. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
You know what I love about Holly's writing actually is that a lot of the stuff I listen to and a lot of Black Library stuff, it's you know, it'll go into detail. It won't assume you know everything. It will go, oh, maybe this is your first book. So it'll work to explain things to you.
Yeah.
But what Holly's book does is it's so pared down. It's so lean on the bone with description and stuff.
Yeah.
That like it just will say something and move on. And like the brevity of it, carries you forward. It just propels you forward mentally, and you have to keep up with it in a way. But also like because it doesn't over explain things and make you. This is not slagging it off at all. It sounds like it is, but it doesn't make you think too hard about it. It gives you a concept and then leaves your subconscious to make up your, what your idea of what that concept might possibly be. And in that way as well, she creates an incredibly full world, an incredibly lived-in world with its own history and its own character, its own nooks and crannies. But it doesn't labor over explaining what those are. It just lets you imagine them. But because her words are so evocative and so well chosen, it means that your version in your head of what she's explained will pretty much be exactly what she wants you to think it is, because that's how good her writing is.
Yep, that is powerful.
That is so incredibly well said. That is exactly how it's exactly how I think about it, because I was editing her episode over the past couple days, and you know, I was telling her, I think it was Mandego, I was telling her what I thought Mandego looked like, and then I had to think in my head. I was like, wait, did she like explain how he looked in the book? And I was thinking on it more and more as I was going through it, and you're absolutely right. The description is minimal, not in a bad way, but it's just enough. And then kind of the things happening and the personality of things comes out much more than the physical description. And so, yeah, I have a very vivid image in my head of what each person looks like. It's very clear in my mind. And I think you're absolutely right. That just, says something about her writing.
Yeah. It's like she's a sniper writer.
Yeah.
Like she just picks her targets and like it's one bullet, but every bullet she fires, it nails it. Every bullet she fires has massive ramifications.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Gabe, what have you been reading lately?
So, as I said on the episode with Holly, prior to that week, which would have been 2 weeks ago, I think, I was reading the Land series.
Right.
The Land Founding and all 6 of those books. Finished them, incredible. And then I started Leviathan Wakes. Spencer recommended, he's like, this is really good. You should check it out. Start it. Absolutely loved it. It was so cool. And it was, like we've talked about, it's so nice to take a break from this, kind of grimdark fantasy or whatever it is we're reading and read something more. Go ahead.
And it's the first in the Expanse series, by the way.
Yep. And so it was nice to kind of a palate cleanser, but it felt like more than that, because it was like a palate cleanser with some meat on it. It was like got a lot going on. It's a big series. And then so I read that, loved it. And then I started Caliban's War, which is the next book in the Expanse series. And so I'm about 5 hours in on that.
Oh,
and
wow.
absolutely love it. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yep.
Are
Super good.
are you seeing what I was saying yet? Maybe you're not there yet, but Caliban's War, it introduces all of these new characters.
Oh yeah,
and
I'm there, and it follows them around. Yeah.
And I went into it thinking like, because the first book only follows the two characters.
Yep.
And I went into it thinking like, I don't want to know about any of these other characters.
Yeah,
like,
we don't need to know any about more of them.
Like I liked the two characters that I got in the first book, and I just want to know more about them. And sure enough, you know, however many hours into the second book, I was like, I could not have been more wrong.
Yeah.
And
sure.
you know, I can say that I officially trust this series to do, you know, what I'm expecting it to do, or what I'm trying to get out of it. I very much got to, because I read Caliban's War maybe like a week ago, or I started it a week ago, and it completely blew me away, the ending of it. And I was just like, you know, no matter what doubts I have later on in this series, I truly believe that you know, this author is going to completely bring it full circle and do right by this series. I completely trust it now. So now I'm in the third book. What is it? Abaddon's Fate, or Abaddon's Gate. And again, like it, you know, I have, you know, deep down, I have like the same fear that I did going into the second book, but I'm only like an hour or so in, and I'm like, you know what? They're gonna do right by the reader, and it's gonna be awesome. And so, yeah, I'm loving that series so far. Was there anything else in between, like We Men of Ash and Shadow and Expanse?
So after We Men of Ash and Shadow, I read the last book of the Land series, and so I read that for like 2 or 3 days, and then I pretty much started Expanse. I think there might have been a chunk in there where I put on Battlegrounds.
Oh, nice.
Dresden Files, because I love to go back to the last 2 books there. But yeah, really that's been it. Just the Expanse series, or the start of the Expanse series, and then the Land prior, and of course We Men of Ash and Shadow.
Do you read the Dresden Files, RJ?
I don't, but I've heard many people say how good they are.
Yeah,
so I guess I should.
Yeah, I think if you like Chaos Reigns, you should definitely read the Dresden Files. It's such a special series to us. We're like infatuated with it. But yeah, if you start it, I would recommend probably starting on Summer Night, because the first couple books in the series are a little rough, but once you get through the series and get to the very end, then that's kind of when I went back and read the first couple, and you have more of a appreciation for, you know, you're kind of like, okay, I know where the story goes. I know that these early books were a little bit rough, and so you can be a little bit more forgiving. But Summer Night is really where the story kind of takes off, and that's like really where like the main storyline of the series starts, and so that's where I always recommend people go.
If you see me typing as well, I'm not being rude having another conversation.
Oh no,
I'm literally typing like read Dresden Files.
No, you're
try
good.
Dragonlance.
For sure.
Although I've realized I've typed it all at the bottom of our shared document, not
Oh,
on
that's
That's okay though.
That's totally fine.
Good.
No, that's totally good. Yeah, so other than and sorry, I kind of hijacked your section, Gabe.
No,
I didn't
you're
mean to,
good.
talking
You're
about
good.
the Expanse.
You're good.
But on top of those, I read I finished up Of Shadow and Sea, which is the parallel book to Of Sea and Shadow. And yeah,
so not to interrupt, but you read the other one first, right? So is this your okay.
Yeah, so this would be my second read in the series. And man, I really liked it. They do a really good job of paralleling these two characters, and they cross over, but they very much have their own story. And when you read the parallel book, it is that thing of like, oh, like this thing I didn't understand in the other book makes way more sense with this context. And so you really need both books to be able to read it.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it was a ton of fun. I love the fact that all of the creatures in the world are very Lovecraftian. They're all like eldritch horror kind of Lovecraft monsters. And so that's a ton of fun. I've also I was also reading Stormlight. I was reading through a physical copy of the first book in the Stormlight archive, but I decided to go into work yesterday, and I'm building a fence, and I had Stormlight in my backpack. And here in Washington, we just got like this torrential downpour all of a sudden. Like it was the craziest rain. Like I don't know. I told the homeowner, I was like, I'm sorry, I gotta go. Like I'll see you on Monday. Like this rain is nuts. And so I took my backpack back to the truck, and when I got home, I went to go pull out Stormlight, and it is just ruined.
That's a shame.
It is just completely ruined. And so now I got to go back to like Half Price Books or something and see if they have another one. But I was really liking it so far. All right, well, shall we get into the good stuff here? All right, so like I said earlier, for some reason I am just so we both are so insanely interested in anything voice related. I've always been very interested in people who are like very good singers or very good public speakers or voice actors. It's just something incredibly intriguing to me. So I'm super excited to find out more about you and the voice acting industry in general. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a voice actor / audiobook narrator, and how long have you been doing that now?
So like you, I've always I'm going to preface this by saying it was just an accident, but I didn't realize retrospectively. I've realized that I was always into like voices and not just speaking, but like you say, singers and stuff. You know, I'm an enormous heavy metal fan. And to me, that it's the singing is so iconic in that it's partly the singing why I'm so into heavy metal and things. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with and still am obsessed with Sir Patrick Stewart's voice. When I watched The Next Generation, I was like, that is the coolest sounding dude ever. And growing up, so many iconic comic book I love the comic book movies, and growing up, so many iconic comic book villains, particularly the performance is often so based around the voice. Be it the Joker, either of the two most iconic versions of the Joker, Bane, Norman Osborn. So I've always enjoyed what the voice can do. So I had a job working for an environmental agency, and that was that came to an end because it was a 1-year contract. And I was unemployed for a little bit, and I love radio and wanted to have a rock radio show. So I got into community radio. So I learned about, I got myself a microphone so I could go and interview bands, and I learned my way around Audacity, the free audio program, and got myself familiar with how to work a DAW, a digital audio workstation, they call it, which is just a posh way of saying the program you record in. And I then got another job working in essentially a glorified I got a job doing traffic and travel reports on the radio, but it was a night shift thing, and I have depression, and it made my depression absolutely shocking. So I sacked that off and went and got a job in a glorified phone center, essentially. And then I later got diabetes because I'm an alcoholic, and I quit alcohol, went cold turkey, and so alcohol's just sugar. So I like got bad sugar cravings, right? Ew. So I was just eating all the sugar, all the fruit pastels, all the fizzy fish, all the cakes, everything, Boost bars, all the full fat cola, things like that. And I got diabetes. No one's quite sure whether it was because of all the alcohol with the sugar. Stress is also an issue with the diabetes. So yeah, I got that and had to, and you actually, when you get diabetes, you get a psychiatrist because it can affect your mental health so much. And we do in the UK anyway. And I went into a psychosis because I was so stressed at work, stressed. So at work, I stopped being able to and it's not good when you work in a phone job all day, but I stopped being able to understand English. When I wrote things down, I didn't I looked down and the letters I'd written looked like, Russian Cyrillic letters to me. Yeah. So eventually I had to go off work long term to try and get over this. And eventually I lost my job, unfortunately, because I was so ill. So my wife, who was then my girlfriend, who's been an incredible support to me and has enabled me so much to be a voice actor. She was like, someone I used to know, did audiobooks for a living. Because I got so freaking sick and tired and depressed of applying for jobs that I didn't want anyway. And then getting rejected for those jobs that I didn't want anyway. So I was like, well, why don't I just take the time I've been doing applying for jobs, and then it just gets thrown away. Whereas if I take that time, I saw it as a block, and build something with it, and then I can keep the blocks and build something big with it. Mm-hmm. So she was like, check out this website called ACX. So I did, which is the Audiobook Creation Exchange.
Right.
Where you basically create a few demos of yourself reading things. And then there's loads of book listed on there. You have a few filters for so I looked for British accent, normal British, neutral British accent. And then I auditioned for a book and I got one straight away, which was, great. I was very fortunate of that. It was like a history book. And then that just gave me the confidence I needed. So I was like, I got one. It's straight away. And I had a crap USB microphone. So I must have made it sound pretty good. So I just this is my job now then. This is what I'll do. And then soon after that, as a favor to me, I had reviewed, I used to work for, I used to do horror media reviews. I'm a big horror fan as well. I used to have a magazine column of in a now dead Irish magazine, which was an A to Z of video nasties and stuff. And I gave someone a good review in that, and they said they worked at an advertising agency, and they said, well, how about you provide some Scratch VO? I don't know if you know what Scratch VO is, but it's basically temporary VO that they have in place so they can animate something, and then they'll hire a proper voice actor. And he said, well, if we get you in to do Scratch VO, I can say, hey, why don't we just keep this guy and pay him? And he can be in the real advert. And so I got that, which was very nice of the guy. It was Nick Jr. advert in association with Johnson & Johnson. And then off the back of that, I was like, okay, there's two pretty good gigs there. Off we go. So that's basically how I got into it. And I was like, I got these two really nice gigs, well paid. I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm going to be doing 4 days work a month, for that kind of money. And then reality hit in, and I was like, this is weird. I'm not being offered jobs on major television networks or well-paid books. Am I meant to do more than just sit on my ass and wait? So yeah, reality hit in. I got I got pretty broke and started accelerating my work. So I just started, really put my foot down and start working. And I've been doing voiceover for 5 or 6 years now, full time. So that's it. That's how I got into it. I cut a couple of demos. People in the industry who are a lot older than me will be like, you'll never get agents if you cut your own demo. Don't do that. It's a deadly sin. So I cut my own demos and got agents. So like,
yeah, you're right. Beat the system.
Yeah. So I, every time I see them say that, I'm like, I don't want to say it because they'll say, some people will be snarky in the industry in these Facebook groups you're in. So I don't say it, but I'm just like, well, I don't know how true it is that you'll never get an agent off a self-cut demo. So yeah. And then I applied to audiobook publishing companies with just my demos and stuff, and was like, hey, put me on your books, please. And they did quite a few of them. So yeah, and I've been doing it ever since, basically, along with, a steady flow of ACX work, which is where I got my first ever book from, the Audiobook Creation Exchange. So that's how I got into it, basically, because I got diabetes.
Gotcha. All right.
That's awesome. You mentioned, so are you pretty independent as far as just like sending your demos out to people? I know you mentioned agents. Do you send it to them and then they kind of spread it out?
Okay, so voiceover agents work differently. So when I first got into the industry, I thought voiceover agents were the classic image of actors agents, of Hollywood agents who will sell you to potential clients and push you. That's generally not what voiceover agents will do. You basically send your demos in, and if you like them, if they like you, they'll take you on their books, and then they'll just send you auditions, and they'll send it to all their clients or their artists on their books.
Okay.
They'll send you, and then if you get the audition, then you get the money and you do the job. So they don't push you very much. I've actually just got an agent who's amazing, called Mark Turner, JCM Management International, and he is an agent. I call him my manager in my head because it differentiates me from for me, it differentiates him from other agents, which are more like booking agents, they're called, he told me. And he actually does shop me around, and he actually does promote me to clients, and he works to get me work. And he actually, the other day, got me doing an audition for an on-camera thing, because he was like, I'm gonna ease you into on-camera kind of stuff as well. So he wants to push me and, and further my career and develop me. And that is only within the last 2 or 3 months I got him, of a 5-year career. So yeah, that's how agents work. But mostly I am very independent. Yeah, I go and get my own work generally. I go and get my own work, but also I got to a point where a lot of work was coming to me. So I didn't really have to go out and get so much work anymore, unless it was a particular thing that I particularly wanted to do.
Right.
So Holly's book, for example, is like the first book in a long time that I actually was like, that sounds like a killer book. The title alone, I'm a sucker for a good title. Yeah. And then I was like, yeah, that sounds right up my street. I'll read some reviews. I'll read the first page. And the first chapter is called The Ring of Bastards. Yeah. And I was like, God, this is awesome. So I actually reached out to Holly on Twitter about, how about I do your book, please? So, yeah.
That's so awesome.
She was talking about that when she was on here last week. And yeah, she said basically the same thing. She said you reached out to her, and at first she wasn't sure, but then she looked you up and she heard some of your other stuff, and then she just like got back to you immediately and was like, okay, yeah, you need to do my book.
That's nice to hear. I know another voice artist had expressed interest in doing it, but she chose me, and I was very flattered that she chose me instead. I'm very grateful to her for that.
We're very grateful too, because it was it was excellent. What, jumping down the notes a little bit, since we're talking about it, what was the process like for that, like working with Holly and kind of narrating for that book in general? What was that kind of journey like in the time that you did that?
So yeah, she was a bit, it's her first audiobook, so she was a bit, I don't think she'll mind me saying she was quite unsure, a bit unsure of what the process is and stuff, but she was extremely receptive to what I had to say about how it all worked and things. And I sent a welcome pack out explaining how it all works, a written thing, explaining what our relationship will be as I see it.
Right.
And there was a degree of Holly having to let go of the work, so to speak, because the way I was saying it was like, look, you have written the book, and it's kind of like the same relationship between I'm the director of the film. So I might make decisions that you wouldn't have made yourself, but this isn't me translating so much the book into audio, but I'm doing an adaptation of it, and I'll stay true to it as much as I can. But at the end of the day, as the director of this film, I am also the casting director, so voices will be my decision, and things like that. However, I do also send a sheet to her and my authors and clients and publishers saying, what do you want the voices to sound like? Like what, give me some notes, give me any music that you send me a playlist that you might have listened to. Give me certain songs that you associate with certain characters, things like that. So I try to stay true to that. I don't just disregard it and do my own thing. Sure. But I'm also like, at the end of the day, I'm doing this because I'm the one who knows how to make an audiobook out of a book. So, and she was like amazing. She was like, probably more than anyone else, she's been like, what else can I do to help? Can I provide you with any more material? Can I, how can I promote this audiobook further as well? Which is very, very valuable. And I'm very grateful to her for that. She was just like a perfect client, honestly. Like, so yeah, that's how the process was. So yeah, I sent her, I sent her the first opening 15 minutes of the book to see if she liked what I was doing, if she had any comments for me to change. The lead character's voice, Sanderson's voice, Ludnor's voice. And then, and she did want, and Henriette's voice. And she did want Sanderson's voice changing. So I was like, yeah, I can do that because, early doors. And then like, she also thought Henriette was a bit broad. And I went back and said, well, broad as in broad accented, like a bit,
Right.
Cause she's very like, very Cockney. And so I changed Sanderson, but I was also like, I'll keep Henriette like that because I skim read the book to begin with as well. Right. And I was like, this might sound funny now, but I will be able to get the emotion out of that voice as well for the sadder scenes and the more traumatic scenes later that she has to go through. So it was really great collaboration because, basically highlighted there, on one instance, I was like, yeah, I think you're right on this voice. On the other one, I was like, I think I might stick with the voice I'm doing. I might know better because it's in the audio format. So it was, awesome collaboration. And that's the process really. And then I just was like, after 15 minutes, I was like, right, off I go. And then a few, 3-4 weeks later, I delivered her the audiobook. So that was it. And magically I made, and then I send her a spreadsheet saying, are there any mistakes and stuff that I've made that you can pick up? I proof it myself, obviously, and listen back to it. But I'm only human. And amazingly, she didn't pick out any mistakes, which I was flabbergasted by. So, so that's it.
I was gonna say, how many times, speaking of proofreading, how many times do you do a book for an author and then they say, like, oh, this needs to be like the way you say a word, like especially in fantasy, there's all these weird pronunciations and stuff. Does that often happen where an author is like, these words are pronounced very specifically?
No, because if it's something like fantasy, I'll ask them beforehand, right? I'm, I'm not completely, I know I said I read sci-fi more, but I've read plenty of fantasy and seen plenty of fantasy movies and stuff. And so I'm like, I do know to send a message to the author saying, just what weird words do you have in this fantasy land, and tell me how to pronounce them. And if they want me to record the words beforehand in just one audio file so they can correct me if necessary, then I'll do that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Gabe, can you imagine how how difficult it was for Nick Podell to do King's Dark Tidings? There was so many random words that were like spiritua sieclie.
For sure. When he gets in there. The other thing about Nick Podell too is he also did the Land series, and in that series, like, there's such a vast amount of, and I know this is the specialty for narrators, like I said, all the different voices, but in the Land series, there's like too many to count. Different voices, different areas, different people. You got orcs, this, that, and and in my head, it's like having to like remember, first of all, right, how you spoke that voice, 4 hours ahead when you have to do it again and whatnot. And yeah, it's pretty incredible.
So what I do to get around that, I've also, there's another series I've been doing called The Dead Sagas by Lee C. Conley. Great, another grim dark book. It's low fantasy, I suppose, Vikings versus zombies, essentially.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's proper like fantasy horror, like proper gory. I love it. And very bleak. Children being killed, love it.
Yeah, that's grimdark right there.
Yeah, and there's like in the second book, there's like a council of people talking, and there's like 8 different people, like all speaking over the top of each other. And that doesn't probably sound like a lot, but it is actually quite a lot in one scene to make all of these people sound different. So my way around it, I think I developed it on his series, actually. I'm sure lots of people do it, but I developed it independently. Is I make like a so I record the voice, and then like I know a voice will come later. I'm going to have to use that voice. So I have a separate project file open, and I cut out that voice, stick it into the project file, and then I label it with the character's name. And then when I come across another character, a major character like that, I do the same. So, and I stack all the tracks. You can stack multiple tracks in it, in Reaper, which is the DAW I use now. And every track, then you can go through it and scroll through and look for the names of the character that you might have done 3 hours ago. And that was like a 20-hour book. So like there was a lot of, characters, and a lot of characters who didn't speak until several hours ago. So yeah, I could go back into my kind of like codex, my little database of voices, and listen to myself doing it, and then replicate that voice again.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
So that's how I got.
That's what I would have to do for sure, because I would forget so fast.
I think anyone would. Any narrator would forget.
Exactly.
Especially more so if it's like your 13th book in a row or something.
Right. Yeah, because books eventually, you have so many different point of views. By even like the 3rd or 4th book, the amount of point of views, and especially fantasy or sci-fi, they grow so much that what does Wheel of Time have, like 80 something point of views or something crazy like that?
I know the guy who did the Game of Thrones books won some kind of award for doing the most voices in any audio series ever.
That does not surprise me.
Yeah.
I bet.
Jeez.
So a question I have for you, RJ, is if you can pin it down, and if you can't, no worries. But what do you love most about narrating audiobooks? Like if there's a process or a part that you enjoy the most, what would that be?
So, God, there's a few things I love, but obviously it's
Yeah.
it's really fun. I get to tell stories and act for a living.
Yep.
Right.
I get to tell stories for a living and act. Like, yeah, I get to fulfill my dreams of being a badass monosyllabic mercenary on the mean
Yeah.
streets of a grim
Yes.
dark
True.
city or something, you
Yes.
know? Yeah.
That's
But I can also
awesome.
be the villain.
Right.
I
That's
can
true,
also
yeah.
be the tyrannical ex-soldier overlord who's forcefully
Yep.
taken over a city. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I can be lots of different characters and lots of different wish fulfillment.
You
No, that's
you
go ahead.
literally get to like be in an RPG, like you're like you actually
Pretty
are
much.
role playing. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
That's cool. And then kind of along those lines somewhat, what is the process or how does it work? Like basically how do you pick books to narrate for? Do you read the book and say, I love this book and I'll do this? Or is it kind of a writing style that does it for you? Or is it just the kind of thing where you get the work and you're like, this is cool, and then do it?
And do you do you have to enjoy, do you have to enjoy a book to want to narrate for it?
Okay, so when it comes to what do I pick, when someone pays me money, I'll narrate the book.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's kind of what I thought. That's kind of what I thought.
No, so yeah, so basically I'll be, you know, I'm doing a business book in November.
Okay.
And I'm sure I'll enjoy it and learn a lot from it. It won't be, I'm sure I won't, this is not doing it down, but I'm sure I would prefer to be a badass mercenary. But you know, that job pays well and it'll expand.
Yep.
You know, I got to think like about my career and stuff.
Oh,
and
for
like,
sure. Yeah, you gotta make a living.
you know, it's good to have in my portfolio to show that I can
Diversify.
do business books. Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
not just doing genre fiction as much as I love it. But also, you know, it pays good money, that one, and I
Yeah.
need to buy food and I want to do nice
Yep,
things. So
of course,
yeah,
of
that's
course,
it.
absolutely.
But when it comes to like pursuing books, like I've done another book recently called Sick Fuck, extreme horror, which does exactly what it says on the
Yeah,
tin. By
yeah,
Ash Ericmore.
nice,
Like it
nice.
is absolutely revolting.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and I got like bitten. So when I asked Holly if I could do We Men of Ash and Shadow, I was like, oh, that worked out well. I really enjoyed doing that. I'll go and find another book. You know, if I come across another one, I'll just reach out to an author. And that was, you know, and I love horror, like I love all kinds of horror movies, you know, the classics, you know, I love The Innocents and things like that, The Omen, you know, but I also love like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Last House on the Left and The Hills Have Eyes, you know, like horrible things. So I just wanted to do a splatter movie version of a book.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. So I was like, and I actually, you know, is it Peter or Pete McLean, who does the Priest of Thorns, Priest of Bones?
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't know what his name is.
It's Pete or Peter McLean or McLean. Anyway, I saw him mention that book and saying it was absolutely, he was reading it and it was gonzo sick. And so I was like, no, I'm going to check that. And it, you know, I read a bit and it was absolutely horrible. You know, it starts off with, it's the point of view of the most horrible person ever, who's like a serial killer. And he's, you know, the opening sequence is him like abducting a child from school.
Wow.
And that's like, I was like, yeah, I quite fancy doing, stretching myself in that direction. And doing a bad horror. I mean, well, when I say bad, I mean nasty
like,
horror.
Yeah, gnarly. Yep.
Yeah, gnarly, that's the word. So when I pursue things, it's generally stuff I just really want to do because other stuff I audition for money, whereas and those auditions are generally what come to me, the auditions, because the bigger paying stuff is generally bigger publishers who are put the word out. They're seeking a quality voice actor, and so I get to audition for them. Whereas other stuff I personally want to do, I go out and find it, which is so far been Holly's book and Ash's book.
Awesome.
So, nice.
That's how I find books. I just really want to do them.
For sure. No, that's super cool. I like that that's kind of gives you the choice of your own. It's I'm trying to think about this is right, your career, your job, but it's something that you have a lot more control over than most people do. Like for say somebody that works at Boeing or whatever else, where their job is just a set in stone thing. So that's super cool. You get a little bit of creative license on the way you want to work around and what you want to do, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, but it is on the other. I don't want to be like some artiste like living.
Sure.
No, for sure. Yeah, no, it's still work. I mean, yeah,
well paid. Like, so I do corporate work. I can do a corporate video for a that.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm losing you guys bad right now.
no, I think it might be RJ's Wi-Fi.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's probably just
Maybe
the
it's
distance, man. It's just got to be the distance.
Yeah.
We're far away.
Yeah,
but
we
I like
are.
that
Sorry.
entire. No, you're good. It's not your fault. But that entire thing, I could barely. I wasn't.
Do you want me to go back and say that again?
Sure, if you want. Don't feel like you have to.
Yeah, no, I mean, I heard it. Was it okay on your end? Like, did the video get there? I mean, like, what? Oh, it won't. Okay, yeah.
I'll say it again, and then you've got the choice if you want to keep it or whatever. So yeah, I don't want to make out that I'm some artiste living this high life or whatever. Basically, I can do a corporate video for a company that no one's ever heard of, and the only people who will see the video that I've done the voiceover for are the people who work internally in that company, and that afternoon's work can sometimes pay twice as much as a 12-hour audiobook, which might take 2 or 3 weeks. So the sense of the payment is in just as much the creativity and sense of control and doing something fun as there is actually any financial reward.
Yeah.
Right.
Audiobooks of all the VO industry is probably the least well paid, I have to say, which is unfortunate, but it really is. Yeah.
Interesting.
I wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah, I kind of, it makes sense when he's talking about corporate stuff or, really big publishers or just basically entities with a lot more money. They're willing to pay you more for whatever else. So that totally makes sense.
Right.
So moving a little bit away from that side of it, we're going to talk about Women of Ash and Shadow a little bit. I am just curious, to who was your favorite voice to do, your favorite character to narrate, your favorite kind of scenes, or like what was, basically the question is, what was your favorite character to narrate and why? But of course there's more to it than that.
Well, my favorite character is Kosik.
Yeah.
So, I speak like this. It's like slurring as well.
Yeah.
I absolutely love doing that voice because when Holly sent me the form with the character voices, she mentioned something about Turkish, and I'm not good at Turkish.
Sure.
So I was like, well, but these people can be from wherever. They're from a place which doesn't exist, so it can be just a foreign language. And when I was reading Kosik, I kind of saw him in like a white and red stripy top, quite cartoonish, a bit. So I saw him as a cross between Wreck-It Ralph and the Russian from The Punisher. And so I was like, well, I enjoy doing a Russian kind of exaggerated Russian voice. And he's got to be extremely deep because he's massive. So I just enjoyed pushing that as much as I could. And I love him as a character. So Kosik's my favorite.
Awesome.
Although, I love doing Mandego because he's like a Cockney asshole version of Jack Sparrow and the Joker combined. And then I love doing John Vanguard because it makes me feel like a badass, which I never feel like in real life. And Sanderson I loved as well.
That's okay. So
prick.
Yep, I was gonna say Sanderson is my favorite voice. And it is, just the way that it's spoken, I love.
Oh, I'm pleased. People keep saying different voices to me are their favorite, so that's a good sign. Hopefully, that I've done a good job with all of them.
No, definitely.
Awesome. My favorite was Mandego for sure, and then probably Tyrion as a close second, because the way you portrayed him in your voice just gave me such a vivid image. I don't know how to explain how that like translates, but when I heard Tyrion's voice, I had this picture of like, this black haired kind of noble guy. He's a little bit thinner and he's kind of like a medium build. And it came across so perfectly because he's kind of got that in his voice. He's kind of got like that noble pompousness, but he's also very not sinister. I mean, he is, but like very like calculating, and like he thinks very very like point by point, and his thoughts kind of go from point to point, and you can hear that in his voice. You can hear that in like the calculating nature in the way you portrayed that. And so that was something that I really liked.
That's very kind, thank you.
With
him, I wanted to keep him very tense, like restrained anger. So I kind of tensed up when I did him, because he's just like simmering away this kind of like violence that could let go at any moment.
That's interesting that you say that. I totally get that now that you say it. How, when you're doing a character, and this kind of leads into my next question too, when you're doing a character, is there certain things that you have to do physically, like in the chair, to get into that character? Like you said with Taryn, like tensing up while you were saying it is.
So like again, this is going to sound terribly pompous, artiste, and I hope it does. Like I take a more actorly approach, what I call an actorly approach to my narration. So there's another style of narration which you've probably heard, which is a very straight narration where there's not too much variance in the voices and stuff, and it's quite really straight and I think that kind of narration is the kind where it allows you definitely to paint your own picture on top of the words that are being relayed to you, whereas I think my version is painting the picture as well.
Right.
And so so when I did Kosik, like I have to put my head very far down here. I can only speak like this. So there's all like some of the voices murder me as well. Like I couldn't do it if I was working in a studio on the clock, because I would wreck my throat and not be able to carry on work. So like with Sanquin, he speaks very hoarsely like that, and I imagined a bulldog. With jowls. So I it's hurting my throat now, but he's very much like that, and then I would have to take a break. I physically definitely change my posture and stuff when I'm doing different voices. So
that's awesome. Part of that reminds me of this other question I had. How long can you go for? Because, I'm thinking every week we record this podcast, and at the end of it, my voice is gone for like a day, and I have to drink like my special tea and stuff. And so how do you how do you like prepare your voice? Is there like a regular maintenance that you kind of have to do for it? And then how long do you usually sit in the chair for to record at a time?
So I don't really maintain I drink a lot of water. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
And I drink fizzy water if I can, like from my soda stream, because
Yeah.
I find it lubricates my mouth better because it all the bubbles push it around your mouth. And also like normal water is really boring and I don't
Yeah.
drink
Yeah. It's hard to drink a lot of normal water.
Yeah. So I like to drink the fizzy stuff. How long can I go for? It really depends on the characters that I'm doing for the book I'm doing. If the characters aren't very hoarse, like, okay, so things like We Men of Ash and Shadow and the Dead Sagas, everyone's a gruff, bad mother. Like, so you know, I'm doing a lot of that voice, whereas I might do a voice for a romance book, and you're not really doing that voice very often. So with We Men in Ash and Shadow, I could go for maybe like an hour and a half straight of talking, maybe 2 hours at a push. And it helps when certain chapters don't contain characters who are restrained on the voice, because my voice can kind of recover as I'm doing those characters before we go back into
the really hard ones.
Doing the gruff characters. Doing the gruff characters again. So yeah, like usually I do an hour, but I tend to just I try to do an hour for my health's sake, but I tend to go into like 2 hours, 1.5 hours, 2 hours often, because I'm just enjoying a book.
Right. Kind of going along with that too, you know, a couple different points of what we've talked about recently is you mentioned that some narrators will, and this is actually like, you know, I'm sure some people love it, but it's a huge pet peeve of mine when a narrator just won't do different voices for anybody at all. I read I've been reading some of Anthony, or listening to some of Anthony Ryan's books, and he's had the same narrator for a bunch of them. And the narrator is a great storyteller. Like when he's just like narrating the non-quotational parts of the book, it's very pleasant. But every single character sounds the same, whether it's a woman or a man or whatever. Sure. And so that often like kind of takes me out of it. And I know some people don't really have a problem with that. But also what I've noticed is it's very, and you could probably speak to this much more than I could, but it seems like it's very difficult for a man to do a woman's voice and for a woman to do a man's voice. There was another book that I was listening to recently called Among Thieves, and the narrator was very good. And luckily the narrator was a woman, and most of the characters in the book were women, so it wasn't that much of an issue. But every time a man would come on screen, they had a very hard time doing what you would think of a typical male voice. And so, you know, Henriette and all these, and Carmen and Paulette, all these women and We Men of Ash and Shadow, you just knocked it out of the park. Like they all sound so phenomenal and so believable. There's really only, you know, 2 or 3 voice actors that I've heard that really nail a female voice, and you're certainly one of them. What is it like trying to narrate a female voice for you? Would you say it's more difficult than doing a male voice? And is there anything specific that you have to do for it?
Well, that's very, very kind of you to say. Thank you so much. I am very flattered. Thank you. So with a woman, obviously just talking a higher register and make it a bit softer. But to me, like, I think, I personally think don't try too hard to make it a woman, is what my philosophy is when I do it. I'm like, I will speak a bit higher and I will speak a bit softer, but I won't try too hard to make it sound like a woman. I'll just change it. I'll change my voice a bit, but not a lot. And I think that sells the effect better because you're not suddenly confronted with my voice speaking like that or something.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Right.
So it's for me, I don't really do much different other than a bit higher and a bit softer. And I kind of think like, you know, some women have deeper voices. Some women have higher voices. Some women have deeper voices than men who might have higher voices. So I also bear that in mind. I just kind of like, if I can justify it to myself, that this is a woman and this is convincingly a woman, but I also am like, but this is a woman played by a man. So it's gonna, it's always going to have some limits. Then yeah, that's just how I do, how I perform women. Yeah.
Do you typically, I'm sure like recording yourself over and over, do you typically, how long do you work on a character? Like how long do you work out kind of what this person's voice is? And obviously it'll vary from character to character, but is it a long process of trying to figure out what this character sounds like?
Well, I don't want to like make myself unprofessional, but no, like I'm sure a lot of narrators do, but I just kind of like barrel into it. And like I'm just like, my approach is take a run up and see what happens, you know, like and if it doesn't work, I'll just go back and change it. And if things aren't working, you know, so I do it, you know, I get the notes, I cheat, and I get notes from notes from the author. So that does a lot of research for me.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're working with a publisher, a bigger publisher, they have narrator preppers, and they'll send me documents of research on the pronunciation of words, of what the character should sound like, different accents, the history of certain things. So that helps a lot. But generally, I take a bit of a run up at it and see what sticks. A lot of it's there in the text as well. You know, good writers will describe how someone talks at the start, because that's at the introduction of the character, because that's a very important thing.
Right.
So, and I've never written any, and if they don't describe that, then it doesn't matter. So you can do what makes sense with it, whatever you want within reason. So I'm pretty good at a lot of accents. So I'll pick an appropriate if feasibly this is a cosmopolitan place, like a large city in a fantasy land, I can pick an Irish accent for one character and maybe a Scottish accent for another, because it's a city and people from all over tend to flock to cities, just, you know, in real life. So I'm like, well, why not there? So yeah, an accent's a way to get into a character. I just read the text basically and see what seems right to me. Any striking imagery that I have in my head that seems to fit, such as like with Vanguard, for example, I know, you know, as I was skim reading it, I think actually it's literally said in the text he's a man of few words or something, or he didn't speak very much.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'll just make him quite quiet, quite low down, and he speaks quite quick, like short word. You know, he speaks. You know, his words are quite short. He's not flowery. He's the opposite. He's quite curt.
Right.
And then I was also like, well, he's getting on a little bit. He's been in war. He's essentially a professional fighter. You know, he's a killer. So he's probably taken a fair few punches in the throat. So his voice is probably going to be
a little hard,
not silky smooth. So that's how I arrived at Vanguard, for example.
Okay, nice. With, you know, you mentioned that you do so many accents. With that kind of range, do you have any like impressions or impersonations that you like to do of pop culture figures or actors or anything like that? And can you do an American accent?
I can do an American accent. I can do it like a general American accent. Or sometimes I can go down south like that. So it depends which American accent you want. I'm working on like I can't do it now. I'm trying to do New York as well.
Oh yeah, that's sometimes. A tough one. That's a tough one.
It's real tough. That's real. I think of the gangster movies that I watch. You know, I think a little bit of Harley Quinn. You know.
Yep. Hey, that wasn't bad.
That wasn't bad. Yeah, that was good.
So yeah, I can do those. So a character that I do just because me and my friends are a huge fan of him. I don't do him, but we do these impressions to each other.
Yeah, we very much like to speak like that to each other.
Is it Bane?
Exactly
oh yeah.
Bane.
Yes, yes.
There's a certain bit where he says like to one of the dudes in the soccer, not soccer, American football field, where he's like, how many people, you know, how many other people can disarm this bomb? And the guy says like, only me. And like all of my friends are very tickled by the way he pronounces only you. And then kills him. So yeah, we just like we've exaggerated it now, so it doesn't sound like anything like Bane. But now we just like to go only you.
That's so awesome. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Great.
All right, so another question I have about, you know, not just Holly's book, but any book that you've doing. It doesn't have to be in Holly's book. If you have specifics, that'd be great. But is there a specific scene that like you were just ecstatic to narrate? Anything that was especially emotional or difficult or tough to narrate?
Okay, so it's spoiler free this whole episode, but
you can go light. You can go a little light spoilers.
This is a death. This is a death.
Okay.
There is a character who dies near the end, right? And you know, who's and I just like his final lines are online is very funny. Right?
Yes.
And I was like, I actually went back and did that over and over again so I could get him to say it in just the right way that I really liked. That was both him dying, but also him like having some last bit of venom and hatred and bitterness. One final up yours, mate.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I love that.
So yeah, I loved doing that bit. And there's also a very funny bit as well, where there was a bit that I just cracked up that I loved doing. Because what's great about Holly's book is like there is nothing funnier than poo. And and there is a bit in her book and because it's such a straight book, it allows you to deliver like comedy moments very straight as well, and it's even funnier because you're delivering it in that straight gritty way. And there's a bit where two people meet for the first time and they're looking at each other pooing in a bush, staring at each other. And like I absolutely loved doing that. It took me a lot of takes because I was honestly cracking up, not able to finish the line. So I really enjoyed doing that as well.
That's super awesome.
God, there's so many bits in that. Oh God, there's loads of bits in that book.
It is a great book.
Okay, so there's this whole bit as well. Sorry to ramble on.
No, you're good.
There's this whole bit as well where it's just Kosik's thoughts inside his head, and he's like basically going on. He's having this internal monologue about how he is this mistreated animal. He's like a bear on a chain and stuff, and how this little I can't remember if it's a guy. I think it's a little kid. Yeah, a little guy is basically going to try and fight him because he's been forced to fight him.
I remember that. Yeah,
and like he's just like full of like, this is crap. Oh, this is awful. I hate having to do this. This is such a shame. What an abused. You know, not only pity for himself. There's pity for himself, but also like it's mostly pity for his people and pity for the person he has to fight and stuff. And that like got me really emotionally. So that was a killer bit to narrate as well.
It's awesome. Very, very, a lot of very powerful moments in that book.
Yeah, totally.
And I can't even imagine doing the audiobook, but even to us, it speaks a lot to at least my emotions and all that stuff.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm not going to spoil anything, but in that scene, when he's going through that monologue and just the this kind of like plan he had for the theater, and how he had just hoped that it would be this like bright thing for the city to have like art there and stuff, and just that whole kind of what it turns into is, you know, because the city essentially asked for it, you know. And so yeah, I that was very I think on the episode we called it quietly sad, just because it's so is, you know, it's just kind of one of those things where like it is what it is, and there's nothing anybody can do to change it, and this is the way people are surviving, and it's super sad. Let's see. Oh yeah, I was gonna mention you know, you kind of going away from that a little bit, you have a YouTube channel and I think a website where you upload some of your narrations. You do like War of the Worlds, and then you had a live stream of We Men of Ash and Shadow. Do people often like watch that and reach out to you, or is that like a really good way to I don't know, I guess just kind of interact within the community through
No, it's
through
a
those?
massive waste of time. It's like it's fun to do, but like no one's ever like, oh, and people have commented and said that's nice, but like in the grand scheme of things, it's not beneficial, particularly maybe I just need to do more, but people haven't reached out to me particularly through that means. They've just got in touch via email or something, or Facebook, sometimes my Facebook page. So I enjoy it and I'll do more of it. I meant to do more recently, but my depression's been pretty crappy. So I haven't done so much recently because I'm just sat there and I'm like, oh, I don't want that added pressure of screwing up in front of everyone. So I will do more so of it. And it probably will be valuable in the end. But so I uploaded all of the War of the Worlds.
Right.
And that's just been slow, you know. It's audio but on video, and whereas I then later uploaded it as a podcast, and it just keeps going up and up and up and up and up, and we just hit like 3,000 downloads for the thing, and like, which is I'm very pleased about, because there's only 27 episodes, and I uploaded them all on the same day several months ago, and it just, the amount of people who listen per month keeps going up. So like, yeah, I think podcasting will be vastly more beneficial to me. I'm like working on Dracula at the moment, so
cool.
When I've uploaded that, I think that's gonna push it even further and be even more beneficial to me.
I was gonna say, yeah, I thought you had uploaded Dracula, and I never read the original book, so I was very interested to hear your rendition of it. I'm definitely gonna have to watch or listen to it for sure.
Awesome. It's coming. It's just I don't get paid for that. Like it's essentially like I love doing it and I want to do it, and it's a passion of mine. But when it comes to justifying doing it for work, it's kind of like an enormous business expense, you know? Like the amount that I'd earn on a book, well, if you think, and Dracula's a thick book, like Dracula's that thick.
Oh, wow.
That's a brick. Also, look how beautiful that version of Dracula is.
Okay, I like it.
Isn't that stunning? My wife got me that because we love Whitby, and we love horror and stuff, and Whitby's where Dracula's set. So yeah, but like, so if you think how long it would take to narrate a book of that length, it's probably maybe 20 hours or something in there. And then think what what would I get paid if I was doing a book 20 hours that someone was paying me for? Well, essentially minus that from my earnings now. I'm spending that money because time is literally money when you're doing audiobooks.
Absolutely.
So like, you literally get paid by the hour of how long the audiobook is. So I'm like, minus that from my earnings, I'm essentially spending that on marketing. So I can't wait to, you know, Dracula's unfortunately on the back burner right now, and I can't wait to crack on with it. But it's just, you know, I've had to prioritize paid work, as you can imagine.
Right.
Yep. That's important.
Gabe had a question about how you guys get paid and stuff.
Yep. So you pretty much just answered it. I talked with Spencer either yesterday or the day before, and that was kind of talked about the question and what it was, but I was curious to how like basically getting paid works. Like, and you just said by the hour, so that's one of my big questions: by the word, by the hour, by the whatever it was. And then so is it like something like you'll agree upon a price with the author or the publisher, and then you sit down and do it for that price an hour, or is there a different way of doing it?
So you get paid so there's two major ways of doing it. There's royalty share, where you get 50% of the royalties. However, that's more like 20% of the royalties, because Amazon takes a colossal...
I know who Jared, when we were on with Jared talked about that. He said the platform's great, but there is a chunk that you have to pay to them to do it.
Huge chunk. It's royalty shares are real. If I have to be passionate about a book to do royalty share, because it's not as well paid as it could, it can be, it's a risk as well, because if that book doesn't shift, then you ain't getting no money. Royalties. But so there's the royalty share stuff, which is about 20% of the royalties. They call it 50%, but it's 50% of what remains. Which is 40%. And then there is PFH, which is per full hour. So you work out how much an hour of audiobooks a book costs. So say, I generally work for $225, $250 per full hour. So 1 hour will 1 hour of finished audio will cost them $250. 2 hours will cost them $500. And going on like that. So that's how you get paid. And then obviously when you've got 45 minutes, you break it down fractionally of how much that will cost. So that's basically, and there is a new system called Royalty Share Plus, where you get which is a hybrid, where you get a smaller amount per full hour than you normally would get, but you get some royalties, but that is a smaller amount of royalties. So it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Gotcha.
Right.
That's perfect. That totally answers my question.
Yeah, I've kind of known this for a while, that Amazon is problematic in a few different ways. But the only way I really know to buy an audiobook is through Audible. Is there a better way that people can be supporting audiobook narrators, like a better way of getting the book somehow that gets more money into the hands of audiobook narrators?
So there's things like Kobo and stuff. There are, if you look for audiobook, you just Google audio. Kobo's the one that comes off my head, but off the top of my head, but I almost think it's like redundant in a way. Like Audible is like the be all and end all almost. So I kind of feel like fighting against it, and I want the users to have a good experience as well. I want people to have accessible books, and like I find it, I think it would be a pain in my ass to have multiple different audiobook apps. Like the Kobo and then something else, Audible or something. So I just kind of think, like, buy it how you want to buy it, but make sure you buy it. Like, there's plenty of pirate audiobook stuff out there.
For sure.
If you want to support an audiobook, for me personally, if you want to support an audiobook narrator, what I find valuable is leaving a review wherever you can leave a review, and sharing the book around and recommending it to people. And there is an option on Audible where you can send, if it's someone else's first time receiving a book, you can send a book for free, and then encourage that person to leave a review, because reviews equals more people wanting to download your book.
Right.
So there are things like Kobo and places like that, but I think it's a bit of a moot point sometimes, given how godlike Audible is.
For sure.
It is so expansive. And then the question kind of comes up, like, I kind of wonder what Audible owns, as far as like Netflix is the only person who can stream certain shows, right? Mm-hmm. And so I kind of think like, wouldn't Audible be the same way, where they're the only ones who can sell this book basically?
You might see on some books on the cover, they have a little stripe in the corner that says Audible exclusive sometimes.
Yeah.
So they do have Audible exclusives. And that is of benefit to them, obviously. And the way they entice people to make their books, audiobooks, Audible exclusive is when you're doing it via ACX. When you go Audible exclusive, your book only gets posted on Audible and iTunes. I don't know what deal they've struck there. And that's the only way of getting promotional codes for your audiobook to give away. So you give them out to reviewers, and you give them out to you can give them away as competitions, etc.
Right.
All kinds of ways. And often, it's to promote the book. Like any competition is, when it gives away a product, it is to promote something.
Right.
I don't think anyone's naive to that. So that's the only way you'll get those codes. So that's how they keep you being Audible exclusive. Whereas if you say to Audible you're not going to be Audible exclusive, you then have the right to post it all over the internet wherever you like. But I still think the majority of your downloads are still going to come from Audible.
Yeah.
So why not take the promotional codes?
There.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. All right. We'll kind of skipping away from that for a second. So, we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but there's so many uses for a voice, right? There's so many different things that you can do in the industry, whether it's audiobook narrating or cartoons or video games or anything like that. What do you think you would like to work on in the future? Is your goal to to get to movies and TV shows and stuff like that, or do you want to go to video games?
I love video games, so I'd love to do video games. Like I just did like a mobile game called Simure Vikings, which was fun. But I'd like to, get to some AAA games, and I'm actually pushing quite hard in that direction.
Nice.
Right. No, trying to push hard. I'm pushing hard. Whether or not any results will come of that is beyond my control. But I've cut myself. I've got a video game demo that I released recently and created recently, and I've been doing massive email campaigns and trying to get in there with various agencies again. So I would adore to do video games. That looks like a hell of a lot of fun.
Yes.
I would adore to do animation. I'm working on Scratch VO for a company. I've signed an NDA, so I can't say what it is, but it's a very major. Okay, it depends what your concept of major is. It's not a Disney movie, but I would say it's pretty friggin' major.
Yeah.
And it's Scratch VO, but my intention there is, I hope you get paid. I need to get paid.
Yeah.
Scratch VO, no matter what. But also I'm also going to be like, well, if you liked me doing the temporary voiceover, how about just whack me in the real thing? And it's all there for you. So I'm pushing to do animation and video games at the moment as well.
That's awesome.
My dream is to also narrate audiobooks for Black Library who do Warhammer. I grew up playing Warhammer, and I still play Warhammer, and that to me would be like me. To me, that would be my equivalent of getting to be in a Star Wars film. It really would.
That's so cool.
So I would really like to do Warhammer books, because I love it. Yeah.
So the Warhammer books are pretty good then.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of fun. Very good writers in there, and they're really pushing what they do with them now. They've even, it's not just battles anymore, like war stuff. They have new imprints. A few years ago, they released Warhammer Horror, which is horror stories set in their fantasy universe and their sci-fi universe. They've just released, I think last year, they released the imprint of Warhammer Crime, which is crime stories set in the far future, which is so cool, all in this one city called Varangantua. So yeah, they're just so good fun. Like it's a 30-year-old franchise, sci-fi franchise, which is never rebooted, which is just like, it's just layer upon layer. I tell people, like, when people are getting into 40K fiction or whatever, like, it's all the deep end. Like, they do not take it easy on you. And that's part of the charm for me. I love that, like, you then have to go and look up on a wiki what this certain thing is or something. It's just layer and layer and layer and layer, like rocks or tree circles, it's just layer upon. And there's so many authors, and they've done it in a way that they say it's all canon. Like they go, what is it they say? They say all of it's, they say basically all of it's true to lesser or greater extent, because these are the stories of people told within the universe, and people often have conflicting ideas of what events are. So if there is any conflict within the canon, they go, well, both of that's true, because both of those are different people's opinions of what happened. So it's just super, thick layered stuff. So I'd love to get involved into that. It's a unique property. Sorry, I just
no, you're good. You're good. No,
beloved sci-fi franchise.
But yeah, it's like where would you start with something like that? Like even for me, looking at like Dragonlance and stuff recently, it was kind of this question of like, or Star Wars books. Star Wars books have gotten like, there's so many, or Star Trek also. Like, where do you start? Like, how do you, like, to get to the point where they're at now, like, how do you find like the perfect starting place? It's just nuts.
I think I would just say, like, go for the really well reviewed ones, so at least you're getting a really good book. Like, at least you're getting a good story. Like, just pick up an Aaron Dembski Bowden book, or a David Annandale book, or a Dan Abnett book, and you'll gold. They are great storytellers. So you're going to be told a great story no matter where it's set.
So are there like multiple small story arcs in the middle of this huge universe that you can kind of pick up and read at leisure?
Yeah, so there's loads of series within it. So it's all this massive milieu, this giant galaxy full of sci-fi goodness, but there are lots of series. There's standalone books, like Hell's Reach is an incredible book. I'd tell anyone to start there. But there's series, so you can just read a series. Like, the most famous one is probably Eisenhorn, which is about a guy whose job is an inquisitor, who was kind of like, I guess, the secret police of the Imperium, like above all law and stuff, hunting down threats to humanity and stuff. And there's an Inquisitor series, an Eisenhorn series based on Eisenhorn, and then a character gets spun off called Ravener. So you can then you can naturally go, oh, Ravener, well, I'll read Ravener next. And then another character gets spun off called Beckwin, and you can read her series of books. So, and then by that point, you're just kind of like jumping between all of the, jumping like electricity between certain touch points.
Wow. That's really cool. I like that a lot.
Oh, and Eisenhorn is in development to be a live action TV show. So just
no way.
Whoa. As well. Yeah,
really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So you could maybe just wait for that and watch the TV show in a few years.
Hopefully it's on HBO Max. They always are you excited for this like the Wheel of Time TV show that's coming out, like the Lord of the Rings TV show that's coming out?
I'm more excited for the Lord of the Rings one because I am a Middle-earth lover. The Wheel of Time, it looks kind of impenetrable to me, but I will give it a go. I'll definitely give it a go. I'm not much of a TV watcher, to be honest. Like, a lot of my screen time is like video games or YouTube content, like your guys' stuff. But I will watch them both, definitely. Like, I'm watching The Expanse and stuff, so I'll definitely give those a go.
Yeah, I feel like nowadays I am so selective with what I watch as far as like TV and movies, because I've always read books, but for the last, I don't know, year or two, Gabe and I have just been on a tear of reading like literally like 2 books a week.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I don't know
isn't
how
that
you do it.
It's our work, man. It's
Yeah.
just because like I work, I work 10, 12-hour days where I'm by myself and just very
He's
focused.
driving.
Yeah, yeah. So
So
I
he-
deliver for Amazon, and so
Uh-huh.
I'm just driving, so I can pop a thing in, and my entire day I can listen.
Yeah.
12 hours a day.
Perfect.
And then I own a small construction company, and right now it's just me. These past couple months it's just been me on projects, and so I just kind of show up. The homeowner doesn't usually bother me, and I just put in my headphones and I work on whether it's a deck
Nice.
or a fence or a house extension or whatever.
Mhm.
And I just kind of go and listen to it. And so we tear through
Yeah.
audiobooks like crazy.
Mhm.
We've probably spent, if you think about it, how much money have we spent on audiobooks in the
Probably-
past 2 years? Because
Probably thousands, dude. I mean, like if you
Yeah.
think about it, like for every 3 credits, it's like $40, right?
yeah.
And if we're reading, 2 or 3 books a week, like yeah, that's a lot of money.
crazy. So do you have Audible subscriptions or what?
Yeah, we have like the 14. So we have like the $14.99 a month or whatever, where you get one
Yeah.
credit every
a year,
month.
yeah, or a month, yeah, yeah.
That's-
Yeah.
yeah.
And so that kind of cushions you, but then you can choose to pay like almost $40 for 3 credits if you want, so that you're not having to buy like 3 $30 books. You can
Yeah.
pay like whatever, like $12 or whatever to get it. And so yeah, we just buy those credit packages, and we just cruise through them. And Audible has a ton of sales and stuff too. Like we just got the that first Drizzt book for like $4 or $5, because they're always doing sales and stuff like that.
I'm always looking for the 2-for-1 ones so I can spend a credit and get a free book.
Yes,
Right.
I pick up like part 3, part 7, part 9 and 12 of a series, and then I just wait until the other parts come on the sale, so I can like fill in all the blanks, and then I've got the full series.
Yep.
You know what's funny is a lot of people are into the Cradle series, and I've wanted to get into them, but there's like this it's like this month or whatever, free on Audible is like the 9th book.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, so I'd have to buy every single book before, and then like every month or every 2 months, whatever it is, it goes up to the next book. So next month it'll be the 10th book.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just way too late. I should have listened to it when it was free.
I doubt they'll ever give away part 1s though. Like
I know.
I'm collecting, like there's a 40k series that's critically acclaimed called Gaunt's Ghosts, and like I'm just like collecting them all. I'm like, come on, just give me part 1. All I need is part 1, and I can start rolling on this thing.
I know.
Don't they do an unlimited service now or something? So you can pay a load and just get like everything free. Well, get everything.
That would be crazy. I would do that instantly.
Me too.
I think they do. I mean, hold on.
No, you're probably right. I say I've never even checked it out. I've got my
Audible Plus unlimited listening is here.
Okay.
Dude,
that's so awesome.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, the Audible Plus catalog. Okay.
So I don't know what's in the catalog, but
yeah,
still though, it's
have
better
to
than
check that out for sure.
Definitely.
All right. Well, we have a couple more questions before we wrap up here. They're not super extensive or anything, but have you ever worked on a project with multiple voice actors, and how does that work coordination wise, whether it was a book with multiple actors on it or like a voiceover for, a commercial or a cartoon or whatever?
So I've worked on an audiobook with 2 other narrators. It's called From Something Old. which is like a drama book. That's a bit drama book. What the fuck is that? It's like I don't know how to describe it. Like if that was in film, I suppose literary fiction. But I'm always like, what's literary fiction?
Yeah.
I find that such a stupid term.
Yeah.
I'm like, everything has a genre. If it doesn't have a genre, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Drama's a genre. So all right, I'm gonna go with it. It's a drama book. A very good one by Nick Alexander, and it was by Brilliance Publishing, who are the biggest publisher I've worked with. They're like an Amazon company that do Audible exclusives and stuff like made for Audible kind of stuff.
Right.
So basically the producer of that one just linked us all up together. It's just started an emailed us all and said, this is all you guys, like it was two of the narrators I was working with, ladies, and we just started chatting via email saying, okay, we recorded bits of audiobook together. So not together, I should say. We recorded our bits because it was separate chapters. We weren't talking together. One chapter would be one narrator, one etc. But so we could get know what each other sounded like.
Yep.
We would email each other parts that we had recorded before we were going to record proper, so we knew what we were doing with the characters, and then just collaborated that way. And then it was kind of like almost back to working normally on like a solo project. Like you would have an opening bit where you would chat together, and then just go off and record your stuff and send it in again. Like we would talk to each other now and then to ask advice or give help on certain things, or possibly inform each other's performance based on what the other people were doing. But it was it was a surprisingly smooth, good experience, which didn't require too much extra work. I worked on that, for example.
Okay. Yeah, because I would imagine, if you guys are each alternating chapters instead of alternating characters, like how do you guys fix it? I guess it's just through collaboration, but if you had a certain voice for John and then in their chapter they were to do their voice for John and it sounded drastically different, I'm sure that would take quite a bit of collaboration and making sure
so that's exactly it. So we went through beforehand, and like they were very good at Brilliance, and they would prep us and tell us about our characters and even how much they appeared in the book. And then we would record ahead of time the voices that we intended to do for those characters, send them to each other, and then as best as we could, I would emulate other the two voice artists, how they were doing their particular characters, and then once we've got that down, we know what the voices are and what voices we need to emulate, then we just crack on and record the book.
Very cool. Do you like one of the things that I like about working in the kind of career that I've chosen is that a lot of it I can do by myself. I don't have to like worry too much about other people besides like getting lumber deliveries and stuff and coordinating that way. Do you like playing kind of a like solo sport as opposed to a team sport?
Yeah, I hate people. Me
too. You and Spencer are the same person.
So I'm like, the reason why I got so depressed at work, one of the reasons why I hated the standard 9-to-5 kind of stuff that I was doing, was just like having to rely. Your success was dependent on others, not being total like dumbasses.
Yep.
And so like, I could get so frustrated with people being idiots and stuff like that, and relying on other people to do things and those things never getting done. That one of the things I love about this is like, I know something will get done because only one person's going to do it, and it's me. Like I really like that.
Yep.
I love playing a solo sport. So you, as you describe it, like exactly. I don't like working 9-to-5 as well because I'm much more of a night owl, and like I like to, I like to come into my studio and work till late. And if I want to work till late, I can. And if I want to sleep in because I've worked late, then that's fine as well, because I've, the hours average out. So yeah, so much freedom and flexibility in playing solo sport.
Especially since your studio is, in the opposite building. You don't have to worry about anybody in the house making noise or anybody getting upset that you're making noise or anything like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, like I although sometimes my wife is in the garden, there was something I was just having to do death screams for an audio drama. And like she was trying to have a nice cup of tea with the dogs and a peaceful afternoon, and all she could hear was and stuff like that coming from my studio.
That's hilarious.
Speaking of like screaming and stuff into the mic, there was this part in that I really wanted to tell you about. There was this part in We Men of Ash and Shadow where, and again, this isn't really going to be a spoiler or anything, but Taryn is upset with his mom for not knowing who he is. And he we were talking about it with Holly. I think he like grabs her by the neck or something. And the way you did it, and audiobook narrators do this sometimes, and it makes me like physically feel something where you like growled into the mic like, why don't you remember me? And it was kind of like this visceral, like you could feel it. And awesome. I love moments like that. I love when audiobook narrators aren't afraid to do that, or when they're not afraid to like yell. Like if a character is yelling, like I would love to hear more audiobook narrators. Like, obviously I don't want my earbuds to blow out or anything, but I love it when a narrator like yells and they're yelling a part and you can feel it and it feels real. Or I've even read some books recently where the narrator, if they're a good singer, they'll sing a part from like, if they're in a tavern or something and there's someone singing on stage or whatever. And so I love those visceral moments, and I appreciated that so much. There's this part in King's Dark Tidings where there's this character Tam, and he kind of he lets down the main character like in a big way, and the main character is kind of, without being spoilery, the main character's like bodyguard person did this thing where they exit the room, and Kai, the bodyguard, he like grabs Tam and he pushes him up against the bulkhead in the ship, and he's like berating him, and he's like it was just another one of those moments where it was Nick Padell, he did the voice for it, and he's obviously fantastic, and he just did this voice where he sounded angry and he was like yelling at this guy Tam, and it just makes you feel something. And those kind of experiences are really only something an audiobook narrator can do, because an author can write it that way and you can read it and understand it that way and have this kind of image in your head. But when a narrator really goes out of their way to display that, it's very much bonus points in my book.
I'm pleased. Thank you very much. They're a bitch to do though.
Because,
I bet. I like do multiple takes often because your microphone will peak and it just sounds distorted because it's too high. Your levels go above the bar where it can register it. And so like there's a lot of like turning away and shouting or and working out, trying to make it not sound like I've turned away from the microphone, but also having to turn away from the microphone. Otherwise you're going to scream and, you're going to blow the thing and have to take it again. Yeah. I mean, compressors help. Like that's where mastering and stuff comes in, because you put a compressor on it and that kind of like, it sees the peaks coming or the high bits coming and just lowers them down and
Okay.
compresses them, hence the name compressor a little bit as well. So post can help with that, but yeah, they are a pain in the ass to do, but they're definitely worth it, like you said, for the reasons you've just given.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I was wondering how that worked, if you had to kind of like be away from the microphone, but still, do you have to be like aimed at it in order to but like step away?
So when I narrate, I don't even narrate into the microphone. This looks like, so I would narrate like I'm talking to you. Hold on, I'll take that pop guard down. So I'm actually talking like away from, you can see the microphone's pointing this way and I'm talking that way. And that's to avoid plosives and pops, if you know what they are.
Yeah.
Which is like that air coming out. Yeah. So that's to avoid that. And I'm very plosive-y. So I have like 2 pop guards on my microphone.
Okay.
Nice.
So I'm not talking directly into it anyway. And so when I'm shouting and screaming, I often turn away even more. And there is also like the art of like quietly screaming as well. So when you've got to like, quietly shouting, trying to sound like you're shouting, but you're actually not doing it particularly loudly as well. There is that technique to use as well.
Interesting.
But generally, I turn away a little bit from the microphone and do a quiet shout.
That's awesome. I love learning about this stuff. This is great. Okay, Gabe, you got a question coming up here at the very end.
Okay. So RJ, have you ever worked with an author or even publisher who was very specific about what they wanted, or do most authors give you a lot of creative freedom? We kind of already talked about this just a little bit, but I guess I'm more curious in if do different authors or different people set like these requirements that they like you have to follow, like you can't change this, you got to keep this character just like that or whatever else.
Has anybody ridden your ass about it?
Yeah. pretty much.
So early on when I've done books, I've just made the mistake of saying, if there's anything at all you want changing, like I'm so like so new and fresh that I'm like, I'll do anything for you. I'll do anything at all. Sure. I have made that mistake. And people have requested me to change voices, and then I've been like, nah, not doing that. That's a lot. Not for extra money. I'm not. Sorry, not for free. I'm not.
Right.
So that's why I created this welcome pack, so I can, people might be specific, but I will say to them, you can't be specific from the outset. Or I'll say, you can be specific, but at the end of the day, like, this is always going to be through my filter. I'm narrating this, and it will not sound like what's in your head, because I'm not the voice in your head.
Right.
So, like, and I might make different decisions for characters that you might not agree with, but like, I think it's best for the audio, and it's what I physically, I have limitations of what I can do. I'm one guy trying to do all these different voices, and including the narrator voice. I try and make that its own voice and make that different as well. So if a voice is more exaggerated, then they would perhaps like, well, if I reined everything back in, all the voice is going to sound very similar. And one thing that I really appreciate in reviews of this in particular, and in like other books I've done, but in this in particular, is people have said I could tell which characters were talking at the right time. So distinctive characters. And that's because I might push character voices a little bit more into a slightly, I hesitate to use the word, but maybe more cartoonish, exaggerated way of doing things. And the author that might not be the author's instincts in a realistic world, but ultimately they will see that it's a benefit to the book, because their reviews are going to say, we could tell who was talking at the right time. And that's good. Reviews are good for business.
That's what. So I was So before I read this book, Spencer recommended it, right? It says we should do a thing on this if you like it, yada. And that was one of the first questions I asked him. I was like, how's the narrator? How did it sound? And that's exactly what he said. He's like, it was great. You can literally tell the difference from every character without fail. Like there's no
That's
confusion.
awesome.
There's no, and I would agree with that after listening to it. So I think that's really important because I've listened to some books where, you have these two characters that are separate, but they kind of sound the same. And then they may not say like, oh, who so-and-so said this. And you're like, wait, is that the guy or is that the other guy? You get confused. So
I appreciate
awesome.
that.
Yeah.
For that, I mostly take inspiration from the Dark Knight movies. Like it seems silly.
Oh yeah.
But like, because with the Dark Knight stuff, I put for this one in particular, I was taking inspiration from the Dark Knight as well, because Chris Nolan's movies are grounded and badass and serious films.
Yep.
But they are populated with characters who sound like the Joker and Bane, and Scarecrow and stuff, like, and Batman, the way he speaks when he's Batman.
Yep.
Like, so I take inspiration from that. Everyone's got like a distinct voice, but
for sure
it doesn't make it less impactful or less serious.
Yes.
Yeah, it was the characters were so distinct to the point where I really didn't need the book to tell me at all, like Vanguard said or Henriette said. They were so, by the time I was even a couple hours into the book, I knew exactly what each person sounded like. And it was just phenomenal.
That's awesome. Thank you very much for that. Sometimes when I'm recording, I forget to say such and such said. I start reading it like a script, and I'm like, oh, I should have said Henriette said that, instead of just reading the dialogue in various character voices.
Well, that brings up a good point. What extent do you like memorize the page? Because even when I'm doing like my intros and outros on this podcast, I have to read them like several times to the point where I mostly know them, or what, the kind of flow they're going in. And so is that something you have to do? Do you have to read, do you read the book front to back first, and then do you kind of like work section by section memorizing at all?
I wish I could memorize pages of novels. So I skim read the book to begin with, because again, it's just a financial factor. You can't sit there and really indulge in a novel. You got to skim read it so you can start producing it. And
when you say, sorry to interrupt, but when you say skim read, are you talking about just like quickly just going through it, just kind of banging it out? Okay.
Yeah. I'm not like savoring it or like
just quick,
I'm just
get
like
it done. Okay.
I'm like
Yep.
I've actually, with one book I did recently, it was really useful. I actually loaded it into my phone, the whole book, and then
nice.
Text to speech
device
read it to me, and that was like super useful,
because
I could just go on my dog walks and a robot, and it sounded shit, but I still got all the information out of it.
Yeah. That's cool.
So I should do that again, actually.
That's awesome.
But so I skim read it, and then I actually use a teleprompter. For a long time I just worked off a Word document of the book, but then someone suggested a teleprompter because they made less mistakes and it was easier, and it just scrolls. It knows the words you're saying, so it just scrolls and keeps time, and you don't even have to rotate the mouse, the mouse wheel. And that's like saved me loads of time.
I bet.
Because I make much less mistakes, and it flows just so easier. Rather than reading like this, your eyes are just on one bit of the screen and the thing rotates up, and there's a highlighted section, which is where you're at now. So I just read off a teleprompter, and it really just makes it flow. It's really good. I mean, also I've done quite a few audiobooks now between my main name and like pseudonyms and stuff. So I've got my flow is probably better than the average person as well, and that just comes with practice as well.
Yep. Experience, time,
Well, I mean, like you said, you're doing a ton of practice on your own, doing War of the Worlds and all these other stuff. I'm sure that really kind of adds into like the hours under your belt of just, you know, knowing how to do various characters and knowing how to just do like the narrator voice in general. That's got to be huge practice.
Yeah.
All right. So pretty much the last question. What are some of your favorite voice actors or performances, audiobook narrators? And do you find yourself kind of taking tips from other actors through their work, like listening to a book and being like, oh, I should try something like that? Or do you ever, not in like a rude or a bad way, but ever kind of like dissect their work, like seeing kind of how they came about the part that they did? Like in construction, if I was looking at somebody else's framing, I'd be like, you know, I could make judgments like, oh, I don't like how they did that or whatever, but also like I see how they got to that point, and I can look at their work and understand what they were trying to do.
Yeah, totally. So like the first part of the question, like, are there any voice actors that I like? Like Toby Longworth is an audiobook narrator who's just like audiobook god. Like honestly, like, he is absolute pinnacle. He's incredible. If you enjoy a good audiobook narrator in their own right, Toby Longworth is the bomb. And I also want to add to that, Jonathan Keeble as well is also stunning. Like just the tone of I wish I was that deep and resonant. like just both of them. Like, and they can deliver stuff with such gravity and such just bloody minded grit. Like they're so good. Jonathan Banks as well is absolutely phenomenal. Like he can read very fast, but like still put plenty of emotion, like all the necessary emotion into it. And his enunciation is brilliant. Like he's able to just create. Okay, so what he does great, John Banks, sorry. He can read a battle scene at speed, delivering all of the emotional information. So the battle scene is happening as close to real time as possible because of how fast he's able to read. Like the sword strokes of like two people dueling, like because he's able to read it so fast, but able to bring that precision as well. It's almost like you're watching the sword fight in your head almost in real time.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Incredible. So those three have been like of my major inspirations. Like I think they're the pinnacle of audiobook narration, and I would encourage everyone to check out their work. When it comes to deconstructing audiobooks, yes, definitely. I do that with those three. I actively try to emulate them in some respects, especially Toby Longworth and Jonathan Keeble when it comes to the tone, and especially John Banks when it comes to the precision and speed when it comes to action sequences and stuff. So yeah, I definitely I think about what they're doing with their voice and how they're saying words and where they're putting the emphasis in the sentence and stuff. And yeah, you know, there are invariably, I don't think it's unfair to say there's always going to be audiobook narrators that I like less than that. I don't want to be uncharitable. It's poor form for me to slag off other narrators or whatever, but there's certain things where so I'm not saying they're bad choices, but there's certain things where I'll go, that's not the choice I would have made, but then I can think about why they've made that choice. And that choice will still work. It might not be what I prefer, but it still works. You know, taste is subjective. So it's still very valuable to go, well, how have they made it work, even though that's not the choice that I would have made or the preference that I would have had, yet it still works in its own way. So how can I what can I learn from this of what they in particular have done there? So yeah, I do deconstruct stuff as well. It's great because I love audiobooks.
Yeah.
And it qualifies as research, so I can be like, oh, I'm working too.
Yeah.
So I can feel even better about
exactly.
It's kind of hard not to, right? When it's your when it's your career and then you're listening to somebody else do it, it's really hard not to, I guess maybe see the seams, you know, a little bit, or like see like,
oh God.
yeah.
So that makes me feel so much better as well. Because even in massive audiobook, like the big blockbuster audiobooks, when I'm listening to them and I can hear a plosive, or I'm hearing like studio, like background sound or rustling or whatever.
Yeah.
That's the most valuable thing from that is going, I don't feel so bad about the fact that I left that one of those in my last audiobook that I missed that.
Yeah.
Like it just gives you that confidence to go like, if they've left that in and I've left it in, then it's not so bad after all, actually. I must be doing all right.
For sure. I think, you know, if you're anything like me, I'm not to like the far extreme, but I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. So anytime I'm at work, I'm seeing like these little tiny details and I'm like, oh, I gotta fix it. And I'm like stressing out about it. And then the customer comes out and looks at everything, and, you know, they're never going to notice what I noticed, just because, you know, when you're in a certain career, you spend so much time around that all the time. You know, like there's nothing that I would have noticed in We Men of Ash and Shadow or anything that I could point to.
I'm glad to hear that, because there's, again, you know, I can be like, so one of probably the most important phrase to me that I've ever heard is, don't let perfect be the enemy of done. And that's like, honestly changed my life.
That's when really good.
Yeah. I learned that listening to a Warhammer podcast. They were talking about painting Warhammer figures and like getting the eyeballs right and stuff. And like, and I was like, but you can apply that to anything. That's because they were like, you'll never finish then. You'll just be noodling over the eyeballs or the nose or the cheeks or something. That applies to everything. It's amazing. So yeah, like there's stuff that I would have loved to have fixed in literally every single book I've ever done. You know, plenty of stuff, I'm sure. And I have to think, this book has to be done. There is a finite, you know, the longer I spend on this book, the less money I make and the later it go, you know, it might go over deadline or whatever.
Correct. Yeah.
And thank God, you know, that Holly didn't spot mistakes in mine and really liked it, even though I submit it going, there's stuff I can fix.
Yeah.
You got to hand this in at some point.
Yep, true that. I really like that.
That's so true.
I just put that in my notes on my phone. I love that.
Yeah.
Life change. It changed my life.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, last question.
All right, RJ. So, in your future, what would you say, you know, like what's next for you? Where would you like to be in like, you know, 5-year goal or so in your career? And then another kind of part of that too is, would you like to find a prolific writer and like mostly just do books for that one writer, like James Marsters, who narrates Dresden Files, and he's only narrates the Dresden Files, doesn't do anything else, but you know, it's such a huge series.
So 5-year plan, where would I like to be? I'd like to be doing, I'm not gonna lie, I'd like to be like Batman in a video game.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
I'd like, or an animated TV show. And in my opinion, the best screen Batmans, well, you know, Christian Bale was British, and Robert Pattinson even, is probably going to be the next best British. So probably, you know, I could have a crack. So I'd like to be in, you know, AAA video games. There are times where I go, where's my next paycheck coming from? And I would like to be definitely out of that. Absolutely would like to just be, never have a worry about money. You know, it seems boring and practical, but that's what it is. And, you know, when it comes to, would I like to find a prolific author to work with? Yes. And that pays into that financial stability as well. Like, if they pay a reasonable rate of money, not even a lot, like a reasonable rate, and they just keep sending work my way. Absolutely. Yes, I would do. And even if you know, I would never say this, and all the book, you know, and to be fair, all the books I have done, I have really enjoyed. But even if I didn't particularly get a kick out of it, even if it was books on maths or something, like, I would love the stability there. The bonus would be if it was books that I really enjoyed as well. Like you say, like a Dresden Files series, something to really just get into, enjoy, and you can get comfortable with the roles and stuff. And you know, if Holly wants to do a million more Vanguard books and wants me to do the next one, then I'm right here. So
that's right.
That would be ideal.
She's worried you're going to become too big and not do the next one.
That's what she said.
Listen, it's been 5 years. I'm not massive yet, so I don't think it's happening anytime soon. Even if I was massive, I would be back for Vanguard in a second.
Nice. That's awesome.
That's what I figured. I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, there's no way there could be a second book without RJ Bayley doing the voice.
It would ruin it. Like from here on out, it would ruin it if it wasn't you.
All those characters are so specific to your voice.
I appreciate that, and I will send her this bit of the YouTube video. Just Holly, just when you're thinking to change narrator.
This is what you need to see.
Just saying.
Just saying. So what's on the like immediate horizon? Do you have anything you're working on right now that you would like to promote?
Promote stuff. Okay, so I am working on stuff, but like one of them I've got an NDA, which I mentioned earlier, so I can't really promote. I would be breaching my contract. And I mean, there is, so right now I am just waiting for proofing to come back, pickups to come back for a new book that I've narrated called Naked Eye, which is a horror anthology by a very well-respected writer called Paul Kane. And that's awesome. So if people want to go and pick that one up when it comes out, please keep an eye out for it. He's written a book that I really want to read, but I'm waiting for the audiobook to come out, which is Sherlock Holmes and the Servants of Hell. Sherlock Holmes versus Pinhead and the Cenobites and Hellraiser. I'm like, oh my God, genius. That is mad genius.
That's awesome. I love
I've done a book by him. I actually went and asked him if I could do that book, but he's like 2000 AD's got that one. And I think they're going to do something with it, unfortunately. And he didn't say who's doing for it, but the way he phrased it about having someone in mind, I'm pretty sure they're going to get Doug Bradley to do it, who played Pinhead. So I'm like, if I lose out to Pinhead,
that's okay.
I don't feel so bad anymore.
That's okay.
But I have done another one of his books, so and I would love people to just continue listening to The War of the Worlds, actually, because that's the more people who download that, the more I will get advertising for it, and that's just a steady, nice income. And I am very passionate about that book anyway. I think it's an absolute beyond masterpiece.
Okay, awesome.
So I would encourage people to check out Bailey's Bookshelf Season 1, The War of the Worlds. And I also, most importantly, want to plug We Men of Ash and Shadow, because that is one of the best things I've ever done, both in terms of like the writing, but also my performance in it as well. It's just a staggeringly well-written book. So I really want people to buy that, not only because I get money, but also because I believe Holly's going to be a massive author. Honestly,
I would too.
Yeah,
I would too.
Me too.
And I want people to read it and help make her the author with the stature that she deserves to have.
Absolutely.
Very well said.
That is that's a fantastic note to go out on. I think, final thoughts, just thank you so much for coming on to the show. This is, like I said earlier, this is something that we're extremely interested in. The past, whatever it's been, couple hours have been so enlightening and so much fun to learn about this thing that we're so interested in. So honestly, thank you for taking a chunk out of your night to come hang out with us and tell us about all this and to let us get to know you.
You're very welcome, and I've had an absolutely awesome time, like properly loads of fun.
Nice.
And you're two stellar chaps to talk to. I think you're both great dudes, and
I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for inviting me on, because it's been a great experience. Thank you.
Of course. All right, everyone, we are going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for watching or listening. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and follow us on Twitter at Files Fantasy. And thank you to RJ for chatting with us today. If people would like to keep up with your content, where could they find you?
Find me on, all my links are on Linktree. So you can just go to Linktr.ee/RJBayley, or get me on Twitter at RJBayley, or look for RJ Bayley voice artist on Facebook.
Awesome.
Cool. Okay. And we'll put all that info in the description down below as well. If you're reading along with us, make sure you read the first book in the Lightbringer saga for next week's episode. That's going to be a ton of fun. We're looking forward to that. And until next time,
I will cut off your balls and eat them.
Yes.
Yes.
That was perfect.